long-term golden eagle trends in the northern gray Yellowstone ecosystem. Ross is a graduate of the University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point, got his master's at the University of Montana, and he currently works for the Craighead Beringia South outfit right out of Jackson, despite his work being based out of Livingston. Ross.
Great, thanks, Doug. Before I get started, I just want to say I'm battling a cold here, so I couldn't see it. Yeah, hopefully I don't hack or caught it. Anyway, I'm going to be talking about our long-term Golden Eagle project here in Livingston, Montana. And one of the most unique things about the project is that we're really continuing a project that was started by the Craigheads in the 1960s. And it was actually started by John Craighead and some graduate students at the University of Montana. And this is actually a picture from the original study showing Derek Craighead and Harry Reynolds weighing out a prominent fawn from a nest. And of course, the benefit to having this historic data set is that we're able to compare what we're seeing now to what we know happened in the 60s. And this was a picture that we actually took this year as part of our pre-study. You can see, oops, you can see if I can figure out the laser. Anyway, there's a fawn here. And that. So as the title of the talk suggests, that's going to be the focus of what I'm talking about today. But in addition to that, I'm also going to cover some of the comparison between what we find in Livingston in recent years with Yellowstone and the Lakewood Basin. So the specific questions I'm going to be covering for the talk today are: has density and productivity of golden eagles changed in the Livingston over time? And has selected prey species changed over time? You can't study predators without studying prey, and so this is a newer element to our project and something we'll be talking about. And then in addition, how do we compare? How do the eagles in Livingston compare to Yellowstone? So our primary study area is about 2,700 square kilometers, with Livingston on the west and Big Timber to the east. This is the same study area that the Craigheads used in the 60s. And I just want to point out that a lot of people that work in the GYE have the ability to work in protected areas or Forest Service or something like that. But our study area, everything except one territory, is actually on private land. So the historic study was really just focused on a lot of things that had to do with basic golden eagle breeding ecology. And that included things like nest site fidelity, nest reuse, number of eggs laid, number of eggs hatched, nest success, productivity, all that kind of good stuff. But in addition to that, they also have a prey selection element. And this is actually another picture from the original study where they're going into the nest and either identifying prey items or grabbing prey items. And they did weekly nest entries back then, which is pretty incredible. And most of the information that I'm using for the talk either came from Jerry McGann's paper, The Ecology of the Golden Eagle, or his thesis at the University of Montana, or Harry Reynolds' thesis at the University of Montana. And I just wanted to say that, everybody, probably most everybody heard about John Craighead's passing recently. But I heard last night that Jerry McGann actually also passed away a few days ago. And it's really unfortunate. We need more people like that out there instead of less people. And yeah, it's a real bummer. Moving ahead though, for the current stuff, we started by going back to all the historically known nest sites. And luckily, Derek Craighead was actually a member of the field crew in the 1960s, did some work there in the 1990s. This is a map actually from Harry Reynolds' thesis showing some of the historic nest locations. Derek had a better map showing nest locations, but we went back and revisited all these historic nest sites. And in addition to that, we looked for more nest sites, just probable areas where there could be nests, sitting at vantage points, locating birds as we went throughout the study area. And we used techniques really similar to what Dave uses in Yellowstone, which is once we found a territory, looking for a nest, looking for nest initiation, whether there were eggs laid, how many they hatched, etc. And we're going back to these territories every year. So for the prey selection aspect of the study, we did a few nest entries in 2012 when we were putting transmitters on nestlings, or nests that failed and went to and collected some prey items. But more recently, and definitely much more efficiently, we started using cameras in 2016. And these cameras are basic Reconyx trail cameras. You can see it right there. We're going to these nest sites and spray painting it with a color that's similar to the nest substrate. We're adding material from around the nest. We put it in when the nestlings are 2.5 weeks, or 2 weeks to 3.5 weeks Typically, golden eagle nestlings are leaving around the 10-week mark, so we get a couple weeks worth of data. And the data that we're getting is similar to that first picture I had shown the animal farm. In addition to the cameras, we also did some road-based rabbit surveys. And we chose rabbits because rabbit abundance has been shown to influence golden eagles, whether it's presence or productivity or whatever. And so we just implemented sort of, anytime we see a rabbit while we're doing our surveys, we recorded it. And so we get a very general index of rabbit abundance throughout the study period. So moving on to results. These are all the historic nest locations. These aren't territory locations, these are nest locations. So these are all the nests that were found from 1962 to 1968. And in total, this represents about 33 territories. So they had 33 known territories in the study in the 60s. At the end of 2016, the 2016 breeding season, all the black dots are the current nest locations. We're up to 49 known territories in the study period. And you can see, I don't know if this thing has a laser. Oh, yeah, you can see some interesting things like there's nest sites in the exact same locations as they were in the 60s. And then you can see something like this where there was one nest, and now that's actually split up into two territories. It's a lot of interesting things going on there. And you've got totally new nests down here, and some new nests up here. In total, historically, they had about 27 occupied territories that were monitored per year. Now we're up to about 45 occupied territories per year. The number of young per occupied territory, which is really our measure of productivity, is a little bit lower currently than it was historically, but there was a little bit more variability historically. Apparent nest success is really similar. It was a little bit higher historically than it is currently, but again, with a lot of variability, there's actually no statistical difference between productivity or apparent nest success between the historic and the current study period. But we do have a higher number of occupied territories now than we did in the 60s. So prey selection, in the 60s, they had almost 2,000 prey items collected from 77 nests. It's unknown how many territories those 77 nests were in. They identified 39 different species, of which the most common was white-tailed jackrabbits, followed by cottontails. There's mountain desert cottontails in the study area, yellow-bellied marmots, black-billed magpies, and then Richardson's ground squirrels. Between 2012 and 2016, we have 510 prey items identified from 14 nests and 12 territories. And this is a little bit skewed because the cameras alone account for about 440 of those identified prey items, and that those were only from 5 nests. Even so, we have 27 species identified. Oh, and I forgot to mention that Chuck Preston and his crew identified all of our prey items for us. So thanks, Chuck. The most common by far was Richardson's ground squirrels, followed by cottontails, black-tailed prairie dogs, white-tailed jackrabbits, and then black-billed magpies. So the big things that stand out, of course, is this huge reduction in the amount of white-tailed jackrabbits these birds are feeding on, and this huge increase in the number of Richardson's ground squirrels. And cottontails have remained relatively steady. So this is just a quick regression showing the number of rabbits, our index of rabbit abundance, rabbits per day, versus productivity, and it's almost a one-to-one relationship, which is what we would expect if they were selecting rabbits. Now, of course, the last slide we showed that they were actually choosing Richardson's ground squirrels more than rabbits, but I'm going to get to that in a little bit. So, what does this solve? What have we found? Well, we know now that there are more golden eagles nesting in the breeding scenario than there were in the 1960s. And a different analysis that we did for this, we found that territories that weren't historically occupied but now are had higher human presence in the 1960s, which suggested some anthropogenic reasons for this. And certainly, as we start looking at these differences in prey selection, we're going to get some even more clues as to why there's more eagles nesting now than there were in the 60s. But nest success and productivity rates are the same. And we're seeing this apparent prey shift from jackrabbits to ground squirrels. And of course, we have more work to do on this, and we plan on doing in the years to come, but we'll see at this stage. So Dave mentioned it a little bit, but we've got very different trends than Yellowstone certainly is. And specifically when we're looking at productivity, our occupancy rates, when we talk about occupancy rates, golden eagles on occupied territory in all three of our study areas, occupancy rates have been pretty high. Where we start seeing differences is annual productivity. And so in Yellowstone, productivity is quite variable, but it's generally low. In the Bighorn Basin and Chuck study area, it really varies to moderately low to just unbelievably high. In Livingston, from 2010 to 2014, we had really steady, even productivity. In 2015 and 2016, we had really high productivity. In 2015 and 2016, we had the highest rapid years that we've seen. So I think what we're seeing is this relatively steady prey base of Richardson's ground squirrels, which we're feeding on. But when we have high rabbit years, they're of course taking advantage of that, and we're seeing this increase in productivity. We'll see if that stays as we keep monitoring the population. But before we had these bumper rabbit years, that's kind of what we were thinking, is that they were feeding on ground squirrels more than anything. And it's interesting that all this stuff came out, and happy it came out that way. But we'll see if it actually stays. And part of that, I guess, is this apparent difference in selected prey. And I'm not going to ruin Chuck's time since he's going next. But in Yellowstone, we saw, or Dave said, they had marmots were by far the most single selected species, followed by dusky grouse. And in general, golden eagles, when they're able to specialize in something, they're generally more effective. So that supports our inference that maybe these birds in Livingston are accounting for ground squirrels more than anything. So moving forward, we're going to continue in the Livingston study, focusing primarily on prey selection. The cameras were amazing, and I think we're going to do as many of those as we can in years to come. And also, Chuck, I think, in Yellowstone and Livingston, we're sort of catching up to Chuck on the prey selection aspect of things. But that's something that we're all hoping to continue on in the future. In Livingston, once we get more information on prey selection, we're going to do some more work on prey habitat, on their selected prey habitat, and abundance trends of things beyond just rabbits. And I think the big picture, this collaborative approach we have between Yellowstone, the Bighorn Basin, and Livingston is really providing us clues that we wouldn't get any other way. And it's really an amazing opportunity for us to learn about golden eagles and golden eagle ecology and trends in the GYE. And it's just incredible. So with that, there's a bunch of people to thank. A lot of people have helped with various aspects of the field work. A lot of landowners have been gracious enough to let us go to the property continuously, and a lot of the funders. And I want to just leave you with my favorite three-picture series that we got from 2016, which is this marmot. I don't know if you guys can see it. But these are two 8.5-week-oldish nestlings. And this is 5 marmots in the nest. Followed by mom. This is my favorite part. And then ultimately, baby to the nest. So with that, I don't know if I have time for questions.
Sure, time for one question.
Okay.
Any questions for Ross? Okay, well, I'm going to save discussion to the end. Thank you very much, Ross.